because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different, even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body, because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Yes, welcome. Good morning, Uganda. It is the first day of May 2023. And of course, also the International Labour Day. Now, a lot of people are taking this off as a public holiday, but that is where we also come in to make sure that while you're doing that, we're able to at least put a smile on your face and, of course, catch you up with what is happening across the country. My name is Mollen, Kenyena, and we'll be kicking off with at least the theme of this year's International Labour Day. That is talking about safety and health at work. Now that seems to be huge, but break it down. How safe are people at work? And of course, bringing in the factor of health. I don't know. It seems like there is a lot to encompass in there. But obviously, we also join the entire world to celebrate an International Labour Day. And of course, I am not alone. I'm joined here by Felix Nkunda. Now, I don't know what he thinks about this year's theme, especially when we talk about safety and health at work. Felix. Yes. I am all right. I'm doing all right. How are you? Well, quite a good one, quite a long one, I should say. But you know, weekends are usually short-lived. Before you know it, it's Monday. Yeah.
Well, of course, at least it's good for the ones who are not working today. It's an extension of the weekend, I must say. Yeah. It does take them not by surprise. 1st May has been a calendar day marked off for purposely celebrating laborers. And if you read the genesis of this appreciation, it will be quite interesting for you to learn many, many things as to why we celebrate this day. It takes you back to days where you saw what we call the civil uprisings in the USA. You also look at what used to happen in some of those, the abuses that used to manifest and erupt when workers were being mistreated in countries like South Africa, in Africa, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, in that whole downside of Southern Africa. But also you cross into Europe, where we saw a great uprising around the 80s, in the 18s. Many people who used to work in mines and plantations. Also, we saw a couple of uprisings also down, which also did cross to America. If you remember, many blacks were taken to work on the white man's farm that was both in Europe and America. If you remember, even one of the songs you used to sing as children.
Wasn't that also themed around slavery? I think
Exactly.
that's the word.
But definitely, if you remember, we used to say, I don't know if you remember that song. Didn't you remember the song? Slave,
The one that says slave trade?
Yeah. In America, working day and night, working sugarcane and what. So those are some of the proponents that calls for a celebration of a day like this, that we did need to create a celebration of people who are laborers. Now, the word laborer is very, very different from worker. And that forms the gist of why days like this were chosen to be celebrated. If you go even to the extreme, the biblical aspect, on a day like this for us in the Catholic Church, we do celebrate Saint Joseph, the patron saint for workers. And in fact, most times I remember as a child, every first May we used to carry all our labor items. You go to cathedrals today, you'll see carpenters with some of their tools to be blessed. Whatever you use to work today, you go with it to church to be blessed. So Labor Day is bigger than the context of government, not demising what government also is doing, where we see there are celebrations that will be happening today. Mollen will be giving us more about that event. But picking on the theme, health and safety of laborers, I think this is one of the things that has been abused very, very many times in third world countries. We don't see officials or employers keeping that in very much context. We see a lot of challenges that workers face when they execute their work, and mostly those who do manual work. So it's a good one, well thought and definitely timely.
Well, this year's International Labour Day celebrations will be in the eastern part of Uganda, that is in the district of Namutumba. And of course, as Uganda, we're looking more into the perspective of work, and that really does take in promoting positive work, culture and ethics, and also talks about a perspective for increased investment, employment opportunities, and household incomes. And I think this is also where we bring out the fact that we have also had a lot of demand, especially when it comes to the side of government, on how they are promoting, the works that Ugandans are doing. And we also know that the biggest percentage of Ugandans are very much involved in agriculture as the biggest contribution to the economy. So it does create a gap where how does government come in to support that particular sector in making sure that, everyone who is involved, right from the household incomes that they are talking about right in here, and the big, the big market, or the people who are in the biggest side of production are benefiting. And I think also that is something that we could be looking forward to being talked about for today, in line with the theme that Uganda is putting across. But also as Eastern Uganda, I think that's a particular place right now that has also had challenges, especially when it comes to agriculture, with all the things that have been happening, especially with the changing environment as well. So that could also be beneficial to them hosting this year's, International Labour Day, to be able to front their challenges. We do know that this is also something that has also, like Felix talked about, there are a lot of opportunities that can be tapped into, both for the side of government, but also looking at individuals. How do we grow in terms of a contribution of labor to the entire community? That is still a whole lot of things that we'll be uncovering today. And obviously, as UBC, we'll also be giving you much more of the proceedings that will be coming in from the International Labour Day celebrations right there in Namutumba, and give you what the country has also been up to, especially when it comes to ranking internationally as well. But we do have a lot that is also going on right across the country, and we'll be taking you through some of the stories, both locally and internationally, to look at what has been happening right here in Uganda, of course in our neighborhood, as well as crossing borders of Africa. Felix, tell us what is happening with the local scene.
Well, of course, we will pick it up from our first story, and that will be the First Lady and Minister of Sports, Education and Sports, Janet Museveni, who held a meeting with the Secretary General of the Organization of Educational Cooperation, Sheikh Mosu bin Musalam, who paid a courtesy call on her at the State House in Nakasero. Now, Musubin Masalem, who was in Uganda on an official visit to give a keynote speech at the first international conference on trends curriculum development. The conference, organized by the National Curriculum Development Center under the auspice of the Ministry of Education and Sports, did run from the 26th to 27th April 2023, and the First Lady and Minister of Education was the chief guest. Now, in a poignant gathering at the Lambu Genocide Memorial Site, Rwandans and Ugandans united to pay solemn homage to the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Now, their collective resolve was to ensure that the stories of these victims, forever etched in their hearts, would never fade into oblivion. Presiding over the memorial event, Defense Minister Vincent Bamulanga Kisempija hailed the unwavering determination of the Rwandese people, which has steered them towards a path of reconciliation and ultimately giving birth to a new country. The Ministry of Teso Affairs has disbursed at least 153 million to fund the construction of Karachi Katiti Seed Secondary School that was established by the community in Karachi district. The 2-year-old school, without its permanent structures, has been operating in a church premise before it was relocated to the temporal structure of a nearby primary. Now, Uganda Revenue Authority its one-stop border point at Busia have alleged that persons with disabilities at Busia border have intensified smuggling and being used by some business persons to cross goods from Kenya to Uganda without paying taxes to the government. Palagama Geoffrey, the Eastern Regional Manager Customs based at the Toro, says that the people with disability at the borders, more at Busia, they are being used by some business persons who do not want to pay taxes to smuggle goods from without paying taxes, which affects market structure. Now, Mwajuma Yahaya, the chairman person with disabilities, says that some officers in Nyore are not doing what is in line with the government because they keep on just making allegations.
National scene, the Vatican is involved in a peace mission to try and end conflict between Russia and Ukraine, according to Pope Francis, declining to give further details. I am willing to do everything that has to be done. There is a mission in course now, but it is not yet public. When it is public, I will reveal it. The Pope told reporters on Sunday during a flight home after a 3-day visit to Hungary. I think that peace is always made by opening channels, and you can never achieve peace through closure. This is not easy. The Pope added that he had spoken about the situation in Ukraine with the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and with the Metropolitan Hilarion, a bishop representing Russia Orthodox Church in Budapest. And in India, at least 11 people have died and 11 have been admitted to the hospital after gas leak in Rudayan in the northern Indian state of Punjab, according to the top city official, who also added that the entire area was being evacuated. A team from National Disaster Response Force was at the site on Sunday, according to a video feed shared by ANI news agency. Police was seen patrolling while wearing masks and asking locals to keep out of an area that had been cordoned off, as the video showed. Punjab's chief minister expressed sadness over the deadly leak and the incident of gas leak in the factory of Gyaspura area of Lidaliana, and also the police, government and NDRF teams represented at the spot. All possible help is being provided, according to the agencies. Now back in Africa, Sudan's rival military forces have accused each other of fresh violence of a ceasefire as their deadly conflict ran for the third week despite warning of a slide towards civil war. Hundreds of people have been killed and thousands wounded since a long, simmering power struggle between the Sudanese army and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Force, RSF, erupted in conflict on April 15th. Both sides say a former ceasefire agreement that was due to expire at midnight on Sunday would be extended for a further 72 hours in the move that RSF said was in response to international, regional and local calls. The army said it hoped what it called the rebels would abide by the deal, but it believed they had intended to keep up attacks. The parties have kept fighting through a series of ceasefires secured by mediators, including the United States. In climate news, last month, the world's top climate scientists delivered a sobering warning. Now, their Moth report to the UN boiled down one message: act now before the climate breaks down and becomes unstoppable. The report says extreme weather has forced millions of people from their homes and devastated food supplies. Oil and gas emissions are at a record high, and the UN report calls for drastic cuts in fossil fuels. But if our old technologies got us into this mess, can new ones get us out? Among politicians, corporations and billionaires, one new technology is gaining traction. It is called direct air capture that vacuums carbon dioxide out of thin air and locks it away underground. Sound like science fiction, but we thought too much until we went to Iceland to see the world's first commercial direct air capture plant in operations. Here on Frigid Plain near the Arctic Circle, worries about an overheating planet seems far away, yet tiny Iceland has put itself on the front line with a new kind of machine that will fight climate change by sucking carbon dioxide out of the air. Now, this is the ORCA, the first commercial direct air capture plant on Earth. Well, Felix, a lot of things are happening. If you look at our neighbors right there in Sudan, it looks like the ceasefire was not even respected from both armies, I must say, because even then, the mediators have come through. We have also seen the East African community calling upon, a situation to be rectified in Sudan. But also you do look at how also the US got involved. The UN itself did come out to say there needs to be talks. But with such rampant attacks that are coming in from the RSF, I don't know where Sudan is headed. It looks like those two armies are not looking at the Sudanese people. What do the Sudanese people want? It poses a challenge whether we could be seeing peace in Sudan in the current future. It looks like the situation is really, challenging.
The situation is not only challenging, Mollen, it is definitely very, very bad and terrible. I must also add that by close of business yesterday, 5 more insurgent groups that had a ceasefire agreement packed with government have also taken it upon themselves to come out and announce that they will be for them fighting on the side of the people. In fact, it is believed by today morning that they have already deployed around most of the major cities. So it means we are no longer looking at just 2 fractions at fight now. Probably we are getting into about 7 different other fractions, which are also headed by other militias or militants. Clearly, what we are seeing in Sudan is something that could have been avoided, as a matter of fact. And if you are keen to have listened to the former Prime Minister who made an address yesterday from Nairobi, his assertions were that we are heading to a place worse than Syria and definitely Libya. And his explanation was quite clear. He said that we may never recover from what we are heading into. His fears were truly alleged towards the various failure for the 2 fractions to understand their need to compose themselves into a country than individuals. Because he says, having worked closely with these people, he has noticed that all of them simply just want the top seat. And they will definitely be dwindling in the high days of all these things that, for people. But
what
what's
they are
happening
not
in
looking
Sudan?
at right now is that, yes, they want the top seat, but at what expense? Because obviously
Does
they
it matter
are...
for them?
It should
Does it
matter, because
ever
which
matter for
country
any
are you going to
uprising?
lead with such a very huge decline? And I think you did bring in the example of Libya. It's going to take that kind of turn if they are not careful right now, and actually if they cannot get down on one table and sit and talk about this. It's going to decline that way, and before we know it, Sudan will also be in that category. Like we saw Libya going, and everyone kept thinking, no, they will recover. They did not recover from that.
Well, honestly, it is what it is, and if these two men don't see the need for that, honestly, what else is left to say? The only fear is that now we have increasing number of refugees around countries like Ethiopia, Mali, South Sudan, among very many others. We're going to see a lot of
as well,
influx.
that has had a lot of insurgencies.
Ethiopia, Eritrea, they are crossing, and the countries they are crossing into equally have problems. Mali itself is still struggling with leadership. Ethiopia, you've seen the Tigray and the government. Eritrea is worse than the two of the countries previously mentioned. Somalia is not any better. Now, South Sudan equally is so. The big question, and this is the discussion you have been having with some of the colleagues, that what is left for that part of Africa? And we are questioning consistently, where does the buck stop and where should or shouldn't the African Union come in? And this has been a great discussion into the lax powers always given by some of these integral bodies. They are simply like barking dogs, because if they don't have one, they can't influence internal policies of a country. Then what's the use? If you can't step in, what does it, you see, you've just been saying, does it take USA to come from a million miles away to come and sort of matter of Sudan? You know, when you have IGAD, where one of the country is a member, where you have the African Union that has consistently had meetings. If you're talking about the UN is far from Sudan than the African Union is. You know, for example, the regional heads of state, what has been done? Does it really have to take America to come and sort the issue of Sudan? Honestly and truly.
I think even talking about the AU, I think the African Union itself never really positioned itself in how it can manage such issues. There are clauses right in there that should be governing the AU in how they come in to solve such situations. And I think over and over time, for all these conflicts that even the countries you've talked about, we have not seen them come through. Right now, even the stories that you're reading or what is happening, you do not see their influence in mediating the peace talks in Sudan. And I think that is quite a very huge factor that is lacking in the African Union. And of course, well, I don't know whether at this point Africa needs prayers or something has to be done, but otherwise we still have to be counting on outside help. Of course, with the UN being on a lot of peacekeeping mission, that's why you see them being everywhere and mediating peace. And of course, the United States has had a lot of influence in a lot of African politics. That we cannot put it aside, which is why they know that such a war breaking out would be quite a huge deal, and I think they come in to make sure that at least there is peace in there.
But also, you may not abstractly revolve against the fact that some of these internal aggressions are by far caused by the Western world, as a matter of fact. Now, as I've always said, and I'll say again, how do you think you can be a killer, later on the healer? The same thing we saw in Libya. The death of people like Colonel Muammar Gaddafi and his colleagues and the bringing down of his government was a true castigation of the United States, and they don't even fear to apprehend themselves for that.
They have a factor in there, but you cannot 100% say that it is because of the foreign involvement that we are having all these insecurities and conflicts in Africa. I think some of these things we have brought upon ourselves. For example, you talk about the power struggles. Usually it's about who is taking over government, and that is how it all starts. Now, if we have built our systems as nations in Africa, we shouldn't need influence from out there, as long as we are able to put across terms and how we're doing governance in Africa. We have a few countries that have had to do that.
I can tell
and you
where
see
it
their
all starts.
political changes going on swiftly.
Like which one?
Our neighbors here in Kenya,
You sure
they have
their politics is going on swiftly? That's what you see?
at least
what
there
you
is
see?
at least there hasn't been a lot of struggles, especially when it comes to the military being involved.
You see,
And that's the issue that we're seeing in Sudan right now. We have military trying to fight for
you
the
see
top
what you
seat.
want to see when it comes to Kenyan politics, and others as you may give. But if you go into the depths of the realities, where you have family leadership. Now, we have been struggling with the deception that came with things called democracy. And that the only reason why you're talking about people who stay in power for long is because that is a democracy you've been sold to think that when someone, you're shifting the argument about peace, tranquility, and development, and you're focusing your argument on change of power. Because that's what the white man wants you democratically
there is
to look
also a
at.
challenge of why does the change of power have to be involving all these conflicts? I think that is the question mark right there. Why can't we peacefully transition?
Because you have a deceptive democracy, and it's what I'm saying, Mollen, that today the reason why black people are shouting over this one has overstayed is that should that be the argument, or the argument should be that this person has maintained this country and they have seen growth. You can call it steady or unsteady. For example, look at a country like Libya. Muammar Gaddafi had been there for so long. Now, that is the problem. Muammar Gaddafi's stay, was he the problem, or was he what he wasn't doing? Now, that all comes into our minds because of this deceptive something called democracy that we don't even know. So we must also be careful as we choose to trade, and majorly for our inconsistencies in leadership. Countries like Sudan have been having challenges just like any other country, but Bashir had steered the country with no war for all those years. Now, just 4 years when he's out of power, look what's happening. Probably people have died more than those that had alleged that he had killed. So we must be careful when we are making arguments towards this thing called democracy that we don't even understand. We can't be focusing on change of power than tranquility and peace. And that's my simple opinion towards this white and Western world.
Well, absolutely, much deeper conversations and, of course, discussions around the topic when it comes to African politics. And, of course, the major aim is to make sure there is peace and the people in the nations are not affected by whatever is going on, especially when you talk about taking the top seats. But, well, it is International Labor Day and celebrations are going on. We will also be looking at some of the stories that are coming in from print media, looking at the papers this morning. The Daily Monitor, labor rights drawn in sea of no contract jobs. That is the big headline right there. Museveni praises DPP for fighting corruption. And that is also a story right there in the Daily Monitor. Over 600 doctors to lay down tools overpay. And that's kind of consistent. On page 5 of the Daily Monitor, you get more details. And in health, Uganda on track in fight against malaria. That is on page 16. Also looking at regressive tax policies cripple service delivery. That is quite there for you as well. Looking at some of the other stories, over 1,000 trucks stuck at Busia border, and how far that is going, the contingency, all that you can get in more of the stories. Clerics raise red flag over meat safety. Well, a lot of stories also coming in. You can grab yourself a copy of that. Later on, we'll also be taking you through some of the papers around East Africa. But for now, we will be taking a short break. I'll also take you through a song of the day just to inspire you and get you going for this morning. When we get back, we'll be looking at another topical discussion in Good Morning Uganda newsreel. Good morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Yes, welcome. Good morning, Uganda. It is the first day of May 2023. And of course, also the International Labor Day. Now, a lot of people are taking this off as a public holiday, but that is where we also come in to make sure that while you're doing that, we're able to at least put a smile on your face and, of course, catch you up with what is happening across the country. My name is Mollen, Kenyena, and we'll be kicking off with at least the theme of this year's International Labor Day. That is talking about safety and health at work. Now that seems to be huge, but break it down. How safe are people at work? And of course, bringing in the factor of health. I don't know. It seems like there is a lot to encompass in there. But obviously, we also join the entire world to celebrate an International Labor Day. And of course, I am not alone. I'm joined here by Felix Nkunda. Now, I don't know what he thinks about this year's theme, especially when we talk about safety and health at work. Felix. Yes. I am all right. I'm doing all right. How are you? Well, quite a good one, quite a long one, I should say. But you know, weekends are usually short-lived. Before you know it, it's Monday. Yeah.
Well, of course, at least it's good for the ones who are not working today. It's an extension of the weekend, I must say.
Yeah.
It does take them not by surprise. 1st May has been a calendar day marked off for purposely celebrating laborers. And if you read the genesis of this appreciation, will be quite interesting for you to learn many, many things as to why we celebrate this day. It takes you back to days where you saw what we call the civil uprisings in the USA. You also look at what used to happen in some of those, the abuses that used to manifest and erupt when workers were being mistreated in countries like South Africa, in Africa, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, in that whole downside of Southern Africa. But also you cross into Europe, where we saw a great uprising around the 80s, in the 18s. Many people who used to work in mines and plantations. Also, we saw a couple of uprisings also down, which also did cross to America. If you remember, many blacks were taken to work on the white man's farm that was both in Europe and America. If you remember, even one of the songs you used to sing as children.
Wasn't that also themed around slavery? I think.
Exactly.
That's the word.
But definitely, if you remember, we used to say, I don't know if you remember that song. Didn't you remember the song? Slave,
The one that says slave trade?
Yeah. In America, working day and night, working sugarcane and what. So those are some of the proponents that calls for a celebration of a day like this, that we did need to create a celebration of people who are laborers. Now, the word laborer is very different from worker. And that forms the gist of why days like this were chosen to be celebrated. If you go even to the extreme, the biblical aspect, on a day like this for us in the Catholic Church, we do
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda, and of course we want to wish you a happy Labor Day, and this is where we also want to bring in a little bit of perspective onto what is happening this year, and of course in line with the theme that Uganda has put across as we celebrate, and that is promoting positive work, culture and ethics, a perspective of for increased investments, employment opportunities and household income. Around that is where we also want to center our discussion this morning onto what is happening, especially when you look into all those perspectives of employment opportunities especially, but also household income. And we know that over time, Uganda has always pushed for a better living, especially when it comes to a contribution of labor right from households, right from the grassroots. You look at how much can be done there, and of course that will have to complement the overall investment, the big investments that have been happening across the country. How are we moving so far? What steps have we taken as a country towards achieving the overall goal of making sure that everyone who is contributing to the development of this country is actually recognized? And that is where I want to bring in Felix also this morning to look at some of the opportunities that have been out there. Felix, as we celebrate the International Labor Day for this year, Uganda is talking about tapping into a perspective of employment opportunities and of course with household incomes as well in there. Where are we right now, and what is the projection that is also being aligned to this year's theme?
Well, the annual theme for celebrating Labor Day is quite a good one. Very long though, but it's the authors tried to be on point to try and address the most recent challenges that face the country and hinder it from its tantamount growth. Now, state growth in terms of socio-economic welfare is by far determined by the nature and type, style and fashion of labor and how you handle it. You may not necessarily use the word labor, but you can use the word work, because as we said earlier, there has been a great contrast in trying to re-understand whether work is the same thing as labor. But all that, not going into the gymnastics of language, let's just keep it to the generic. That for you to ascertain by far how your country or society shall grow, it is directly important for you to also take time off to appreciate the kind of labor force you push or you actually foster or you put ahead. Why do you think it is important for us to discuss human resource? Let me put it that way. Now, the importance is that it is the only source of income for a country in terms of revenue and in terms of execution of the economics, the dynamics of economics. When we celebrate days like this, the assumption should be that we use them to rethink those things that can put in place a better, later on conducive, but also put in place some of the best avenues to exploit the existing human resource. Away from just for us giving our expectations, and this is for me the myth I have with some of these topics, that away from just giving expectations on what should be done or a projection, a visionary projection, we should use days like this also to answer the questions, to close up the gaps that laborers struggle with in majorly third world countries. And some of these are, but not limited to, one, poor pay, poor working conditions, lack of employment, redundancy, unprofessionalism, but also later on abuse, among very many others. Now, when we use days like this to make projections of what we want the economy to be as affected or affected by laborers, we may lose the point if we don't actually choose to take time off to answer some of the challenges that hinder our expectations from reality. For example, today is Labor Day. Very beautiful day, internationally recognized, 1st May. But do we, in fact, the suggestions that we always give was that we used to take the whole week off, not necessarily having holidays like this or what, but to be able to have a forum where we answer some of the questions in different sectors, that these events lead up to the general celebration of a day like this. Having had an engagement with the formal sector, the informal sector, supportive sectors, professional sector, government, and later on private, so that we don't just generalize this day. We have been having questions that, and this has been a recurring question, that away from the national celebrations, because then others will be asking, what are you celebrating, when these ones have these questions? The inclusion. For us to answer the theme by far, we must have inclusive approach to issues of labor. When you talk about apprenticeship of household income, how do we realize this? This is not a speech realization that we are looking for, but an actual hands-on. That's what I'm talking. We must deal with the inclusiveness if you want to achieve this that you've put in your theme. When you look at the lower, for example, if you want to categorize our economy and how it is executionary, one, who is most contributory, and at what point are they, or what level are they in this chain? When you go deep, start from the bottom. Because it's sort of like it's a chain. It's one thing, it's the other. We have people who deal in raw products, or what we call raw material. How have you brought them on board? How have you energized them? Because once they are also on board, if you make them part of this financial chain trade, you realize that they'll also be able to actualize your theme. But where we are still struggling with an economy where we see very few people who benefit out of the bigger would-be economy for everyone, you know, that many people are not on board. Days like this should help us answer the questions. Why? The why questions. Okay? Why are people in agriculture not growing in terms of household income? That should be a question. And days like this should help us find answers.
What is our target rate here?
Exactly. When you look at that, what do we do to make them come on board so they can appreciate that you're suggesting in your theme?
And right there, when you talk about what we do to bring them on board, we have also seen instances where a lot of efforts have been going to the investors at a bigger scale. And also some of the tax incentives that have been waived off. You look at especially foreign investors who come in here and they have all these smooth incentives being taken off. They sometimes even acquire free land or exempted from some of the taxes. And then you look at a small scale kind of activity going on. These people, if we are now this year focusing on household income, how are we also giving them a platform to increase on their production or also get more involved in whatever sector? Yet, we are giving all these people, the foreign investors or top investors, a lot of exemptions.
And that's the agony that we struggle with as laborers in the country. That, for example, that's why I told you, when you can use an example in people who do informal work downtown. You have a case where you have a Mollen who goes to China and brings goods. Now, then there's a Mr. X or Madam X from China who comes and makes an application as an investor. He's going to bring the same exact things and is going to have a tax holiday for that matter. They're also not going to be, for them they have good concession loans, non-concession loans from their countries and all these. Now, they're bringing the same products in the same market to fight a Ugandan,
who meanwhile is paying all these taxes,
all these
to go
hefty,
through the
not
processes.
just taxes, hefty taxes and all these things. Now, we have these so-called investors selling pancakes I don't know if we need an investor for someone to make pancakes, because the recipe is Ugandan, unless you're making Chinese pancakes or Indian pancakes or Kuala Lumpur pancakes. But if you're still talking about the pancakes, I don't know if we need an... And this is the agony.
The raw material is right here.
That's the thing. So what
yeah.
Kugoya, is it the style of mingling the bananas and flies, a Chinese mingling style?
Yeah.
So those are the challenges on days like this we want to bring to board to discuss. Okay, someone is bringing these nigina, I don't know, they call them in English, yeah, but those, you know, those plastic shoes. Those plastic shoes, the Ugandan,
sandals,
but now they are being made here. There are companies in Mukono. Why are we still importing them? Okay, so on days like this, we want to revisit those thoughts. Okay, because if you're talking about enhancing a family income, like to have a sustainable, for every family to become on the grid of earning, we must answer these questions away from just talking about the themes. The Kasitas have come out time and again having complaints about taxes, but on a day like that's why I told you we need to change from the shift of having one day of celebration, but we must have events that lead to days like this. Well, one, that some of them are informative. The Registration Service Bureau should also be assisting, that teach people about taxes. What is the use of paying taxes? People are evading taxes. But why? Because they don't have an idea. Some of them genuinely, they don't know that they have to pay taxes, honestly and truly.
And also it poses a scare of especially businesses that are starting. Some of them are so afraid that the taxes might be too much that they don't even know there's a potential right there.
Exactly.
And I think
how
that's
do you
also
file returns?
Exactly.
You know, when you buy purchases, when you get tax reductions, when you can... This whole myth of making tax holidays a political thing, we need to have an informative, educative approach on days like this. Yeah. These events should lead to the grand celebration of today. But we can't just be falling on a day. Oh, it is first day. What is happening? People are going where? The president will be there. Every person, because every minister, you call every, we shall be. It is away from ceremonial. Let's have these days change Ugandans' lives. For example, most recently you've been having issues about sexual harassment. For employees, sexual harassment is a big vice in the country. Who's answering this? Don't you think, as we did up to days like this, we should have had probably the police coming to talk about... Let's be more engaging than promissory. Yes. I think this whole thing of always promising Ugandans, Israel, you are coming, that we are going to get you from Egypt to Israel. You will take forever.
The promised land of forever is something that I think is quite far. But also, Felix, we have seen time and again, also President Museveni coming up to say that there needs to be support for, startups, to make sure that we can also measure up. If a Ugandan is starting up a business or getting involved in whatever sector, agriculture, industry, how are they being helped to make sure that as government they do a part in empowering such a person to come up and make their contribution? And also those are some of the topics that we need to see come up and tap into what opportunities government has created. But also it brings in a huge question mark on, are those even out there? Are there some of the opportunities that as a person, as an individual, are looking to get into all these businesses or startups, as we mentioned, even in agriculture, some of the opportunities that government has created, or even individual organizations, to make sure that every worker is at least able to get into how they can benefit from whatever they are producing. We also cut out issues of minimum wage, and I think that was a huge discussion that did happen years ago, and we did look at it as a failure. We said, okay, no minimum wage, whatever that might not be cleared, but then as an individual, how can you be helped regarding whichever sector you're starting up, to make sure that you also grow and we are not benefiting from looking at the investors to bring change here.
Let me tell you, Mollen, what other countries did post-COVID. The few that I know, that I bothered, and some of them I actually visited, I was there. Countries, their governments took time to understand the plight that had come with COVID. Many companies were assisted financially. Some of them were given some of these excused of loans and what. Government came in. Taxes were exempted and all these things. Now, to make sure that these companies or businesses stay in work, okay? Because today when you close, let me imagine when you close a place like, let's say, hotel, like Sheraton, you don't just close Sheraton. You've closed over 4,000 jobs from the directly, the indirect, and the other associates. You'll find that the people who supply flour, people who push, like everywhere, paper, what. Now, a government must be fearful to see any company close. But in just COVID, I remember it had hit us about close to 8 months. And Uganda, over 1,000 companies had closed, and that was okay. So where are those people today? Today, as you celebrate Labor Day, where are they? Now, that was just probably about 6-8 months into COVID. We are how many years into COVID? Things are worse. Today's situation, economy, is worse than what we were in COVID. Probably we were more fine during COVID, but now it is worse. That's the reality. So how many more companies have closed? Is that a question? As you've put it, that should be our deepest worry. Where are these people? When you come to what we call execution, and in terms of innovation and inventions, that should repulse directly into what we teach our people. How many courses, as we celebrate Labor Day today, have been allied to survival? Can our people survive? Can they attribute their lives to the basics of life? The laborers, in terms of household, feeding, transportation, and clothing. So when we talk about today's celebration, there's direct pain. And that's why you've seen many people today no longer even bother to celebrate such days. In fact, days like these have been dubbed government days. And there's no, the reality of that has been proven by far. Sometimes people have gotten to feel that they are on their own. Laborers. A couple of weeks ago, you saw what happened to the pre-medical interns. All these are events gearing up to a day like this. We have had many assertions, and from many groups. The traders in Kampala from Kasita are telling you we can't breathe. But this has been going on and on. If you see what the containers that are stuck in Mombasa, what URA wants to auction, or we have created an atmosphere where we really feel like we are fighting against each other. As laborers, the private sector, away from just the taxation that government takes, what is government doing for laborers? These have been the question. You see what's happening in the labor unions. It's one after the other, one after the other. What does this all mean? That we need to do what we call soul searching on days like this. We need to do soul searching, actual soul searching. That what is needed, what should be done to make lives of laborers better in this country. And that is from all consecrations or from all directions. In terms of education, in terms of employment. Do we have the right people getting the jobs when they are qualified? Because that also motivates academics. Why would I go to study to be an arts teacher when arts teachers are being vulgarized in terms of payment vis-a-vis science teachers? So we are going to see a great shift into people who will be interested in going, but who doesn't want to build a good academic system? If you don't have teachers who will teach, unless you are going to say let's wipe out totally arts from the syllabus. All these questions must be answered. That's why I say, away from just the question of labor is bigger than what we see. We must have a build-up event. Let's go to Kololo. Invite all the stakeholders. The Ministry of Gender should be there. URS should be there. URSB should be there. The courts should be there. all these Kasita should be there. Uganda Revenue Authority should teach the Domestic Taxes Department. Let the people go there. You go to these NIRA, all these. It must be more of engaging than a celebratory approach. That we must help. For example, issue of opening up markets. People are stuck with goods in their gardens and they're being abused in terms of sale. Someone makes a great harvest and all they can be paid for is peanuts. Motivating laborers is key. Motivation for them. We must open markets. Who's in charge of opening markets for Ugandans? Okay, or we are all putting concentration on people who are bringing in things. But now we have people, value addition. Who is sensitizing people about the projects of government? The parish development model. Who is going out to sensitize them? Or it is only left for the smart ones to take from the people who are seemingly not smart. So as we celebrate days like this and the need to enhance the realization of the theme that is being given, we must be more engaging. We must engage more and more and more. And later on also on a wider spectrum, let me say this, Mollen. The deception that comes with the thought that that Labor Day is for government or people in government service or corporates is quite deceptive. I have seen the lack of inclusion. For example, people in markets, people who are downtown, all this, we must be more inclusive. Let people feel part of these celebrations, and there's no way they're going to feel if they're not being brought on board. That's why we call for all these activities that will lead to the grand celebration of the day. There's lack of inclusion in national celebrations. Now, you're not going to get people in Kalere Market and take them to where the function is going to be, or get the women from Gulu. The only way to have them is to have these leading up events. So we can have engagements by experts. For example, financial literacy. You're talking about household income, but how can it be manifested if you don't have financial literacy? If men are making money and drinking all of it, okay? If women are making money and making up in all the money, saving, the discussions should be real. the discussions, let's be real.
How do we create that kind of environment where you did talk about the savings part of it, value addition, because we know that even then the bigger contribution to the labor force at household income, as we're putting it, is you look at the women or how they are involved. But when that money comes out of whatever they are putting it in, it's the men that again get to
you must discuss inclusiveness.
So, yeah, that is where we also want to look into, you know, as governments. They have posed quite a gap in helping out. And earlier on you did talk about some of the things we have seen around interns, you know, striving for what they rightfully want to benefit from. But it's not just the medical interns. We have also seen teachers come up to say we are not being treated right. And some of the responsibilities that, you know, as we celebrate Labor Day, government should be doing is make sure they defend the rights of the workers in a country. But over and over we have seen that not being the case. People have to first take it to the streets and demonstrate for them to be heard. And even the organizations or the associations that the workers have been involved in have not been given a platform to actually venture into how can they mediate, as you say, peaceful talks towards making sure that the workers are demanding for their rights, and that is being heard. So a bigger question is, why is it that government over and over is failing to again defend the rights of the workers? And obviously in such a scenario, what can workers do?
Well, here's the thing. I wouldn't say directly that government is failing to defend the rights. Probably it should, unless that would be the defense against itself. It should put more opportunities for the workers to appreciate their rights. Because if you say, if a government is to defend the rights from, it is the one that should be the giver, you know. So you realize that it is incumbent on government to create more or better spaces for them to thrive. Employees in this country or laborers in this country people think that they're the people who put on ties and ladies who dress like you, Mollen, and in high heels and what. Those are not the true laborers of this country. I'll be honest with you. The ones who work from 8 to 5 are not the laborers of this country. The real laborers of this country.
Which category do they fall in? Because you still count yourself as, someone who's making a contribution to the overall economy of the country. No, they are. They are laborers, but they only compose about 2% of the entire population. And that's why I'm saying they don't speak. When you look at what's happening in the CDB, you will be deceived. When you see the many cars in jam, you will be deceived. There are places where a car goes there 2 times in a month. They see a car 2 times, and they're Ugandans, and they're laborers. 2 times a month. So for years you cry jam here in Kampala, that, some people see a car twice in a month in their locality. But also they are also part of, and these are the people that we need to help to find themselves. In Uganda to say they need okwezula. Because we need to close the gap. If you're talking about collection of taxes, you're better off with a more bigger population directly into labor for you to collect tax. That's one. It's important. 2, when people are into bigger numbers in the production chain, give you another bigger base to collect tax from. Okay? When people are able to sell into, when more people are in what you call the money exchange economy, if Mollen, you are able to purchase what you need, the country is benefiting. Now, that's why we need to push and assist more. The problem is that some of these third world countries, Uganda not being unique, struggle with the deficiency of what we call socio-economic administration, but also struggle with the excesses of politics. That because of politics, we never take time to understand that if we help many people to be able to purchase or get part of the economy, we are also gaining. These things of saying the country is poor, every time we are poor, every time we are borrowing. No, help the Ugandans that enable them to be able to come. The taxes will be more. Imagine on a day if 2 people are buying 2 kilos of sugar, only 2 people can afford to buy 2 kilos of sugar. How about you get at least 30 people, 100 people who are able to buy a quarter of sugar each? Now, and that's the misery, that we are struggling with the few rich. We are struggling with the few, but the many poor. So on days like this, we must engage. And I've told you, some of the solutions are: 1, value addition. Let's focus on value addition. People who are selling milk, a liter of milk at 1,700. How do you assist them to start selling this liter of milk at about 2,000 shillings? People who sell, someone has a whole plantation of, today you see how people are selling pineapples on roads in every traffic jam point. Hey? Almost 20 pineapples at 10,000. Now the person who planted this, he has sente maker. And you remember you're buying them in Kampala, but probably they were not planted in Kampala or harvested here. But someone is selling to you almost 20. These young kids who hold them like this, say it's about 12 pineapples at 10,000. Now, how about we help these people add value? Because on the 10,000, there's this person who's selling inako money. The person who brought them has money. Now, how much has the person who planted them getting? So that kind probably of about 3,000 for 10 pineapples. Now, that is wastage. Value addition. And for us, we are deceived. When you hear some people say, we are growing, that is growth when people are selling 10 pineapples at 10 or 12 or 15 pineapples at 10,000. So we need to be keen to understand what needs to be done. On days like this, let's not just give lucrative speeches about political stance, but rather socio-economic transformation. We have been having arguments about coffee, Mollen, that adding value. And the coffee we buy in Costco, in Sainsbury, in
in Bariden, wherever we travel, you can go to, it is coffee in Uganda, made in Uganda, but you buy a cup of coffee at about £4, just about 3 sips. What is our dear farmer in Masaka, Bweziwera,
So do
getting?
we have to also look at the fact that maybe we have not had the chance for the local producers to be involved in how much they can do in terms of value addition, which is why we're seeing all these gaps. And as you conclude, Felix, what is the integration right there that can be put across to make sure that at least we are there?
Now, one, we must have what we call a general laborers' concession towards what defines labor in this country. Two, we must agree that there is need to change. So before people don't seem to agree that there is need to change. People seem to be defensive, but there's need. But also, third, we must intentionalize our education directly to affect labor in this country. We must intentionalize our education to directly affect labor. We must teach people value addition approach to work, to be more of innovators and inventors than simply people who are going to be dependents. I don't know if that makes sense. Now, the reason why we are limiting innovation and also limiting things like value addition, because we have been trained not to be people who add value, but people who rather also be able to take what's being given. For example, as I've told you, how many people in this country do sugarcane plantation? But how many people sell it? You go and buy a sugarcane, a whole, I don't know if it's called that one is called a stick of sugarcane or a whole stem of it, but at about 2,000 shillings. But now, if someone makes sugarcane juice, probably you'll be buying at about 10,000 or something. Imagine if they were exporting that juice. Now, this training, let's look at what we train our people in schools. Do we train them to be value-adding laborers or simply people who enjoy taking from what's there? Not until recent, we used to import things like toothpicks. What does it take to make a toothpick? But because we are busy teaching people to go in to be lawyers,
Yes.
to be, you get one client, they have 12 lawyers.
So obviously there is much inclusion that is still needed.
There's a gap,
Yes.
and this directly speaks to the kind of education we are giving, but also mentorship. Mentorship. We are not being good mentors for our generations. We are being more of people of deception than actually good mentors. But also government has a lot of weight to carry when it comes to the challenges that laborers form. For example, opening markets, creating markets, and also assisting in value addition.
Well, I think there is really a lot that we can encompass in there, but also some of the feedback coming in from some of our viewers. Majidu here says that the problem is bigger and there is a widening gap among institutions. Now, for instance, labor officers are no longer in local government and labor unions at district levels are non-existent. He talks about no engagement among institutions on key labor issues that need to be addressed. And also we do have someone here, that is James from Nalia, saying, I believe Ugandans lack exposure that would make them make money from what they have. And consider that Uganda could be better off like other countries, Germany. And he also says, I one time held a view that Ugandans view that Africans love poverty, but later realized that they did not have the knowledge to add value in what they already have. And I think that also adds to what we were talking about earlier on value addition. Someone else, that is Joseph, also talks about quite an interesting one. We shouldn't just talk about human resource, but also artificial intelligence resources. And
that speaks into the notions of inventions and innovation. For example, in Uganda for the last how many, let's say 10 years, what is that one thing we look out to say that we have invented? If you have to take a spectrum of count, that in 10 years, what has Uganda innovated? Away from the killer EVs, what have we innovated? And we can take ownership of it in terms of high-tech, in terms of farming. You know, Kawanda used to come out with all these things. What have we done? Because these are the days when we cause evaluation. Away from having politicians sit on the front desks of such events. We should have innovators sitting on the front desks. That Mollen from maybe Chengegwa had this recipe of this, and now she's producing rice juice. Then you come to Kisoro, you say, this man used honey and did this, now they have this juice that is going to Russia. Then you go to Masaka, you say, this one had this, you know, they are doing yam juice. But you can't be having every time Prime Minister, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Minister of Gender, sitting in it. We need innovators to sit on the front rows of this day's celebration. Not speeches filled by promises, then cadarism.
The potential that has not even been tapped into. For example, when we were talking about earlier about markets, we do have economies that actually are looking at the digital markets as the biggest.
And that's where the world has shifted to.
But you have Uganda where, for example, Facebook has been closed for the longest time. And that could have been a contribution to the marketing. But also I think people should be taking advantage of what is out there digitally in terms of social media, but also innovators should come on board to bring up more opportunities for people to actually enlarge the market. Well, we also want to kind of leave it at that. We'll be having more discussions, of course, coming in later. Look at the welfare of workers on days like this. What is there that we can lead our conversation on as well? But we also want to take you through some of the papers across East Africa. We're looking at Daily Nation for this morning, also talking about pay rise dilemma for Ruto, and that is being fronted right there. Details are on the 4th page of the paper. Raila defies police on protests. Now much more of that as well. Cult of death, controversial Bible verse, fight for church, and Pastor Mackenzie run-ins with the police. That is also a story right there. Talking about chief to spend 10 years behind bars for flogging boys to death. Quite sad stories actually in the papers, in the Daily Nation right there. Pain for parents as varsity fees are increased. And also as we cross over into Tanzania, we look at the Citizen that is also looking at national strategy. Taha outdraw Tanzania's youth to horticulture, and in national penalties, SICPA that is put 3 shillings 210 billion for corruption. Well, in your health access, why Tanzania should step up HIV prevention. That is also right there for you. But they give you a big headline as Tukta lists crucial issues as nation marks May Day. Well, that is also much in there for you. East Africa tourism rebounds to 10% of the region's GDP after a COVID agony. Much more of the stories that are also in there. You can grab any of those papers, also in addition to some of the local papers here in Uganda, looking at the Daily Nation, the Daily Monitor, as well as the New Vision. Much more of the stories. We will be taking a short break for now. When we get back, we'll also look at what is on the road in terms of traffic, and also look at the weather conditions over the country for this morning. Later than that, we'll also be taking you through Good Morning Uganda agenda and much more of what is happening with the celebrations of International Labour Day and local celebrations here in Eastern Uganda. We'll be giving you more details as to when that comes in through. For now, we take a short break and we'll be getting back after that. Good morning.
Yokato, this is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes. Now, the center.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial *100*1#. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Labour Day, or International Workers' Day, is an annual holiday that takes place on 1st May to celebrate the achievements of workers. Uganda will join the rest of the world to celebrate under the theme Promoting Positive Work Culture and Ethics, a prerequisite for increased investment, employment opportunities, and household incomes. Regardless of how you choose to celebrate, make sure you give yourself a pat on the back for all your success. Join us for the live celebrations on Monday, 1st May 2023 at Namutumba District Headquarters.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello? This is Kasozi. How can I help?
Last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey! You don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number and you send it to her chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS, we talk about it?
Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera, refrain from unnecessary engagement with strangers over the phone. This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Well, we want to also look at the traffic situation. Now we're looking at some of the roads. If you're joining into the Kampala-Jinja Highway, coming in from areas of Nakawa, that is also towards areas of Lugogo, coming into town. Some of the roads right there that look to be quite okay for you to use this morning. Now, we do have less traffic for most of these roads today, but also look out for some of the roads that could actually have traffic right there. Now, the Lugogo bypass, the main Jinja-Kampala highway, that is just towards the intersection, but then again away from that, it does actually for most of the areas right there. Now also the lower side, you're looking at some of the roads that are also joining in, and that is 4th Street right there. It looks to be quite okay in terms of traffic, indicated by the green light. That should be sweet as you navigate to head into the central part of town right there. Now also away from that, you're looking at much clear traffic coming in as you join into the Kampala-Jinja Highway. Now some of the downer roads where we're looking at some traffic that is starting to build up. 1st Street, you do have a few distances right there where you have traffic building up, but also that is looking at Old Port Bay Road. That is where we have some traffic that is starting to build up. Now if you're also coming in from that side, Sira, Bogolovi. That is where you might expect that you will have a few traffic distances right there as you join the Kampala-Jinja Highway. Now, away from that, it actually also does get clear as you continue, that is towards the roundabout right there on Jinja Road. That connects with the upper road, that is Peak Road right there. That is Wampeo Avenue. Also as well indicating clear traffic for this morning. That should be quite easy for you to navigate as well that is if you're heading into the central part of town for this morning. Now, away from that roundabout, you're also looking at clear traffic, and it goes all the way as you head onto the traffic lights right there, also indicating a few distances there where you have traffic building up, but also that could be related to the fact that you have traffic lights right there. But also maybe before you reach there, you do have Mukwano Road that is also starting to build up in terms of traffic, indicated by a few red lines, but also that is just a small distance, nothing much to keep you way behind. 8th Street as well does have a few distances of traffic as you head towards the roundabout across 6th Street. So that is one that you might be able to look out for. Again, that builds into Access Road as you head towards the traffic lights right there. And also look at the connecting roads inside. Usefully looks to be quite okay in terms of traffic. Nile Avenue as well. You look at some of those roads that are also joining in as you head towards Kampala Road. That is also indicating clear traffic for this morning. And Parliamentary Avenue also looking at quite clear traffic for the morning as you join into the central part of town. And of course, not having much traffic for today, as it being mostly because of the public holiday. Now, also want to look at the satellites, tap into how the weather is looking like over the country for this morning. We have clouds that are starting to build up, especially for the western sector of the country. That is where we also do expect that we'll have more rains for today. And also as well, the southern sector of the country, we're looking at a much larger system that did start up earlier across the Lake Victoria Basin. That is already bringing us rains for parts of Kampala as well, parts of Mukono. You're looking at Entebbe, quite intense rains that are also heading for, that is the western part of Lake Victoria. And of course, you look at that area where we're seeing much darker colors from black, red, that is yellow as well as blue. That is where we have the rains. Now, much more of that system originating from areas of Masaka. We do have intense rains that are coming over, but also that is the same system that is extending towards southwestern Uganda. You take a look at areas of Mbara right there where we do have that coming in. The system is moving westwards, so meaning that it will also be bringing us much rain towards the southwestern part of the country. So Boshenyi, areas of Ibanda, Shema, you can expect that we will be having those rains later on as the morning progresses. We also do have much of that also moving, spreading across the central parts of the country, meaning that we could also be looking at rains for this morning coming over from areas of Mubende, that is also towards Ruwero, Woblenzi. We could be looking at more rains for you this morning. And that is also a same system that is also propagating towards the midwestern part of the country. We already have clouds that are building up across Hoima, Masindi as well, meaning that we could also be looking at most of those drizzles coming through, but it looks like also that could intensify for much of the morning. Along Fort Portal, also for areas of Ntungamo, we're looking at quite a cloudy morning for you, meaning that we are also expecting that rains might intensify over that area. But also looking at northwestern part of the country across Arua, Yumbe, we also have clouds in the area, a few drizzles for that is parts of northwestern. That is already in play right now as we speak. Looks like that system is also intensifying, and we could be looking at more rains for you this morning. Now, same conditions for the central part of northern Uganda. We're looking at Padel as well, already having cloudy weather. Areas of Bulu as well, cloudy conditions starting off for this morning, and most likely we'll also be looking at a clearing trend later on for the morning. But then again, we do expect that this particular area will have more expectations for wet weather activities later on in the afternoon. Now, the Karamoja region, we're looking at areas of Kotido, Moroto as well. That is where we're also seeing clouds indicated by the blue colors right there. A few drizzles are expected to come through for this morning. We also have a large system that is coming in from the northwestern part of Kenya. That is also extending westwards, so meaning that most likely it will also be bringing us wet weather activities towards that particular area that is across the Karamoja region. Now we look at eastern Uganda, and that is where we're having much more of the celebrations for today on Labor Day. We're starting off with mostly cloudy weather, and that is across most areas right there. We're talking about Mbale, Palisa, Kamuli, Jinja, Soroti, Kabela Maido, looking at quite intense clouds that are starting to build up, but that is also with intervals of sunny conditions. So yes, the weather is still looking like it is quite calm for this morning. We do have a forecast of rainy weather though that will be coming in later on as the morning progresses, but then again that won't be much to get in the way of the celebrations for today. We do have more of the wet weather activities projected for the Lake Victoria Basin, and that's the system that we're seeing right there already over Lake Victoria, bringing rains for areas of Lyantonde, Masaka, Kalanga, Lambara. You can also look at those rains. Remiaga, Ibanda already have rains in the area, and most likely those will be continuing for much of today morning, and most of that also expected to reappear later on in the afternoon as the day progresses. But also looking at some of the forecast models that are projecting what we're expecting for today, much more of the rains are combined towards the southern part of the country. Also, that is indicating southwestern Uganda. If you look at areas of Kabale, that is where we expect much more rains, indicated by the lighter colors right there, also to green. That is where we have more of the rains expected. The Karamoja region as well, that is where we expect more rains for today compared to the rest of the country, as well as that is the Lake Victoria Basin. We do expect that there will be more pickup as well for the midwestern part of the country, as well as the Rwenzori area, Kasese, Bwera, and also towards areas of Masindi. We could be looking at much more of the wet weather activities coming in for today. But for this morning, we're starting off quite chilly. Most of the temperatures are within that is lower to mid 20s for much of the country. The southern sector as well, starting off within the mid 20s as well. The northwestern part of the country, that is the Karamoja region, where we usually have quite warmer temperatures. This morning as well, they are starting off with quite about 26 degrees centigrade, so that means it's quite pleasant, and we could be looking at lower temperatures for much of today. I'll leave it at that. Later than this, we'll be having Good Morning Uganda agenda, and we'll have more discussions, especially looking at celebrating Labor Day. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful celebration and also happy Labor Day.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. This is Good Morning Uganda.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body, because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello?
Hello?
This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey, you don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number and you send it to her chap chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS? We talk about it.
Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera, refrain from unnecessary engagements with strangers over the phone. This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Labor Day, or International Workers' Day, is an annual holiday that takes place on 1st May to celebrate the achievements of workers. Uganda will join the rest of the world to celebrate under the theme Promoting Positive Work Culture and Ethics, a prerequisite for increased investment, employment opportunities, and household incomes. Regardless of how you choose to celebrate, make sure you give yourself a pat on the back for all your success. Join us for the live celebrations on Monday, 1st May 2023 at Namutumba District Headquarters.
Iwakato, this is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes. Now, second the center.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial *100*1#, select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
This is Chilling. Don't miss a brand new season of Chilling on UBC TV.
Jerry con. Jerry con. Hey, Master Blaster. Touch him, man. Bang Jerry con with muscle. Those ones who say go for you only. Mundava, best movies I teach you. When I go to the music because of the cover that is very far. Is you serious? Is serious you? What? Yeah? You step it on it. Add kilometers to your legs and you get your sugar. We buy meat from Umaru and Umaru refuse to give you enough meat. Show him that they don't joke with you. Umaru, Jerry car.
Okukakaluka n'okulungi kwetaagako omuntu akuyambako n'olwekyo tujja kukuteerawo embeera esaanidde osobole okukola ekisinga awamu teri kitulema.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
This is our family's pride.
This is my friend.
This is the future of our nation.
She is the future of Uganda, and the policies I enact today will protect her from teenage pregnancy.
She is the hope of our community, and I will talk to others about how we must protect her.
She is our family's pride, and I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Their support Not so much to me. I stayed focused and was protected from child marriage and teenage pregnancy. I will support other girls against child marriage and teenage pregnancy.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. 1st of May 2023. Happy International Labour Day. My name is Philomena Mastiko, and thank you so much for joining UBC TV. And of course, today being a Labour Day, we are commemorating and celebrating the dignity of all the labourers, the employers and employees at any one point here in the country, but also internationally. Now, well, speaking of Uganda here, we know that the theme practically is looking at focusing on a number of things. But before we get into that, we are promoting positive work culture and ethics, a perspective for increased investment, employment opportunities and household income. And this is going to be guiding the discussion and whatever event is going to be happening as we are over there in Mutumba, where the main celebrations are expected to be held in the Ugandan context. But this morning on the agenda, we do want to discuss a couple of things. When we talk about laborers here in Uganda, when we talk about the work ethic, when we talk about minimum wage, when we talk about the challenges, the welfare, what do we mean by all of this? On several occasions, I'm sure that this is not the first time here on SIT we're talking about minimum wage, and of course in the context of employers and employees. Why is it necessary for us to have that? Uganda being a part of the active countries of the International Labour Organization, how far have we come when it comes to the guidelines we are expected to execute as per the International Labour Organization? So yes, our discussion is going to be rotating around that, and we would love for you to be part of it. Get onto our social media, Twitter, #UBCGMU, and go ahead, make use of our WhatsApp platform, 0709-602-592. How better can we make the welfare of employees here in Uganda? Let us know, share your 2 cents with us. We'll be definitely very happy and excited to share your thoughts with the rest of our Good Morning Uganda family. But looking at the welfare generally here in Uganda, Mollen and Felix, I would love for us probably to, just take through a couple of challenges that we are going through. And somebody was making a point of maybe we need to get deep down to from the corporate organizations to the ones that come before corporate organizations. I don't know what those ones are, but I know that there is a category before corporate organizations, and we give an overview, the challenges generally we are looking at. One of the previously I had you talk about how people are not being paid, casualization of labor, of laborers, looking at foreign investors who come into the country with the whole idea of wanting to create jobs. This is one of the main issues, or one of the main reasons as to why they believe they should be given all these incentives. But what kind of employment are they giving to these laborers? People work for long hours in these companies that are owned by foreign investors. People are working without contracts in these several establishments by the investors. But I mean, is that what they call employment? Is that what we actually call safe and safe employment or safe job environments for these people? Because at one point I know that one of the things we are prioritizing is to ensure that we have foreign investors come in. But is that safe enough for the people who are termed to be their employees here in Uganda? I don't know, maybe just to start off with you, Mollen.
Well, I think obviously there is need to have foreign investors. That's a good thing, because we also look at the potential of what that brings to the country itself, because we do know that there are a lot of sectors that need big money coming through, and of course you do have foreign investors that usually come with that. Yes, the idea to waive off some of the incentives, especially in terms of tax, is to make sure that they comfortably settle in the investment, in a bid that they'll also be employing more Ugandans in that. And we have had a lot of benefits. Now, although there is a question of when the Ugandans get the jobs from these investors, how is that determined? Are they benefiting really? Is it worth the number of hours they put in? And personally, as observing, that is the tea production in Western Uganda, and I was looking at how that whole thing plays out.
Yes.
Right from the people that usually, and a lot of people who have used that Kasese Road, that is around Ishaka, there is a big plant there for tea.
Around Chamhunga,
Around
I think.
Chamhunga,
Yes.
there, yes. So you have people that early in the morning, you see people that are in the gardens getting off the tea leaves.
Yes.
And that is something they do the entire day, morning to dawn. And you look at even the way they are living, because they have small rooms within the tea plantation that they probably rest in, and it doesn't look like their living condition is actually okay. Maybe there's, you know, a bigger living situation for them, but from what is being seen off the eyes, me as a person who will pass by,
Yes.
that's what I'm seeing.
I've interacted with some of the people, by the way, who work on those plantations. When they tell you how much they're paid for a day's work, my friend.
So that actually poses a challenge, because you wonder who is looking out for them. Yes, we are looking for Ugandans getting jobs in such big production.
Yes.
But are they really benefiting? And that's a huge challenge that I think we need to look into. How do we regulate? Even when we're saying, yes, they are bringing jobs, are they really benefiting? How about we empower the locality of how, when these production or when these sectors come up, is there a way that we can make sure that the workers in there are benefiting to how they should be? Because yes, we might want to take off the corporate work and say, maybe you and I that are coming here early in the morning, we probably have a few challenges. There are challenges there as well. But you look at now that grassroots person who is making sure that we are getting the bigger product. Felix earlier was talking about when you have bigger companies shut down,
yes,
the people that are affected, right from the person providing, for example, tomatoes to a hotel. When it fails, that means they're also failing. And also look at some of the situations that we talked about as well. You have street children that are selling. So where is that whole chain that is coming through? Are Ugandans really benefiting from these so-called big industries? So I think the idea that came up first is we have big production. Yes, the people that are employed there, they also have a chain. So this is where we again ask for mediation, especially in terms of associations, organizations that are coming up to regulate.
Yes.
And even when we talk about, earlier you did talk about the issue of minimum wage. 4 years ago, there was a table discussion on whether we should have a bill on minimum wage, and that was rejected. Up until now, the topic was first, I think, revisited in 2015, then in 2019, where we still saw that that is not going to work. And we did see some of the associations that came up. That was the National Association of, that is trade union, NO2.
Yes, NO2.
Yeah, did come out to say, no, this is actually a mistake. As Uganda, we should be coming out to assess how far we can go in terms of minimum wage. There should be a living standard that is given out for all the workers.
I think Uganda is the only East African country that hasn't really worked into their minimum wage policy, according, at least amongst the East African countries, because we are all subscribed to the International Labour Organization.
Which to me is a mistake, because you don't have a guideline. That means every employer could decide this is what I'm paying you. And because of the I wouldn't even call it desperation. We all need a job somewhere. We all need to work somewhere. Anyone can decide on how much you're going to get. And because you need the job so bad, you will take it. But once there is, you know, a guideline as to what what expense can be given out there or what you're entitled to, that could easen things out. I don't think the worries as to why we don't have that bill in play, or why we don't even have a law regarding something like that. But otherwise, we're going to be seeing a lot of manipulation. We're going to be seeing people that are not productive in terms of even venturing into value addition like we talked about earlier. You do have people that are really passionate about what they're producing, but they know that it is going to cost more when you're going for value addition. For example, hibiscus farmer, the expenses that they need to make sure that the hibiscus is put out of the market is even much, and then what they're getting out of it is little, and you're asking them to now buy a machine that is going to grind the hibiscus and get it into powder, you know, in a bid for value addition. Then they can produce more and have a bigger market. But they are also looking at where is the money coming from for them to actually get into that onto that level. So I think as long as we don't put incentives to make sure that people in production are able to take it to the next level, we're still going to be having similar gaps in terms of where we can get production onto the market, or also making sure that it is a huge contribution to the economy.
Okay, and as we look at laborers, of course, if we are to look at them in the context of a per district, ideally every district is supposed to be having a labor officer, but if you look at many of these districts, they do not have any. And also one of the challenges that has really been highlighted over time is that even the few that are there, for them to execute their responsibilities, there is no priority, and this is in terms of underfunding. Now when there is underfunding, there are also other hindrances like corruption. That means it's going to have a limited compliance or compliance to the rules. But switching to the legal side, Felix, when it comes to a number of investment-related policy frameworks in Uganda, they're actually blind to the protection of economic, social, you even look at things like the cultural rights. Now, I will take you to the Investment Code Act of 2019 that, despite recently being amended, still has very many gaps. I will take you one of them. Number one, it does not provide for a requirement for human rights impact assessment. This is to be undertaken by investors prior and during the implementation of investment projects. Now, do you believe that gaps like this really, at the end of the day, they will affect a casual laborer, a normal laborer, looking at the gaps in policy frameworks like this?
Well, Philomena, there's something you must actively allude to when you want to discuss issues of workers and laborers in the country, and the same must emanate directly from the legal provisions or the legal trenches of enactments that are by far binding to all of us as a country. In consummation of that, we must also agree that it was wise thought by those who did take time to construct the national constitution as amended in 1995. And if you may choose keenly, rather not opaquely, to look into Objective 14 of the Constitution, National Objective 14,
yes,
which does also cause ripples for government, or actually pushes government to activate later on what will be evidenced under Chapter 4, that would be Article 40 of the Constitution and following, where they provide for those rights to work. The various rights, they break down. If you go to Article 40, A, B, they give you all of them. Now, this is the anchorage of the discussion of labor. This is what legitimizes the demands that are made forth, because they are not picked in blowing wind. We are not picking pieces of dust, but we are picking the rights that were enacted and make part of the trenches of the laws of this beautiful country. So when you bring into the legalese, it is true. I've given you points of reference. You can look at National Objective 14, later on go to Article 40 of the Constitution. They all give you. Now, if we are going to appreciate labor and what it comes with as rights, there must be need to actualize these. How so? One, in terms of the kind of policy we make. how does our policy framework directly relate with the actualization of what is cast in our books of laws?
Yes.
Do we see that happening? Do we see a great thrive of people appreciating what is right? When you talk about rights, it comes from what is right. And what informs what is right? There are three things. That's why I told, actually there are three, but most recently, academically, we have qualified another. But three things. One, how binding is that? How acceptable is what is being done? But also the non-compliance with natural justice of whatever is being done. That is what makes things or whatever activity right. So the question is, do we see employers appreciating their rights today? And this cuts across. We are still struggling, and I don't want sometimes...
Employers or employees, or both, really, at this point?
They all fall in the same... because
at any one point, even an employer is an employee.
All of them fall away from government as an institution, but the rest are simply grappling with the same challenges, whether employer or employee.
Yes.
When we discuss such agendas or when we carry out such discourse, sometimes I even feel that we shouldn't be castigating government and an institution, but this is a third world challenge problem because of the great fear for a balanced appreciation of socio-economic welfare. What do I mean in this? That labor, the biggest threat to labor or rights of laborers is the fear of states or people within states, or you can call them governments or governance, to have a fair, balanced approach to labor enticements. And I can give an example. One, when you talk about the discussion into minimum wage, the reasons that are given by some of our officials or heads is that one, that because this will scare away our investors.
The investors.
Now, investors are coming to Uganda because of low human resource in terms of payment, like cheap labor.
Cheap labor, yes.
Now, that can't be a characteristic of a growing country that seeks to get into middle income status, or which is already, as our government told us some time ago, we are already in the middle income, which was a big fight also, because also when the world...
There are very many...
when the World Banks and what came out to say, yes, to say, then this one was saying, who are you to tell us? For us, we feel, so we don't know who to believe, but we shall choose to believe our governments more than the external forces. So, that contestation, that our focus as third world countries seems to be on what we are desperate to take than what we actually deserve. I don't want to use an example of women and men, but it is the best one to bring it out. When you see a lady who's desperate probably for marriage, sometimes, and I've talked to many young sisters of mine, you can't show the man that you're desperate for marriage. Because
you have to play it cool.
You should have more reasons for the marriage, not desperation. You can't be talking about marriage in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, in the car. We are buying tomatoes. Like that. Now we are acting like that desperate girl, third world countries. Not just Uganda, by the way.
Yes.
That's why you see some of the challenges we have gotten into. We have gotten into getting into some of these loans that are so humongous. We have these, sometimes even ministers have come on floor of parliament and apologized that we led Uganda in a very bad deal. Desperation. Now, you can't be desperate to say that when I elevate the pay of my people, the other person won't come. Let them not come. But I'm sure they will come because we are.
There is available, labor.
You rather create value to pull them, not cheap labor. Cheap labor is not value to sell.
You're exploiting the employees, the laborers.
You're exploiting. Actually, you're exploiting your poor children.
But the explanation is because then if there is an understanding that the labor is cheap, then we'll attract more investors. Now, what we're forgetting
at whose cost?
So what we're forgetting is that it is the Ugandans that are actually getting that cost. So the benefits
quantity
there
versus quality.
The benefits are not there
Again,
for the Ugandans.
It brings you back to the other girl who is saying, for me, take me home. I'll cook beans and it will become meat. You're promising the impossible. Because your beans are beans. Now, it's what we are doing. We can't be so desperate when it comes to labor. We must be what we call intentional. And that's why our arguments, and I think also the president has been on point on some of these things, that how about we refocus on building value, value addition, that whether Philomena wants or not, they will have to leave China and come here. Because we have created a value-full employee base. Or else, you must then create, there are two things. You either create a value, a society full of value to cater for those gaps, or create a society that can solve its problems. Then you won't be so desperate. But labor today in Uganda is struggling with that approach. Now, you see, for example, a doctor graduates out of Makerere, and because of unemployment, they are willing to work for money that can't even sustain them. Now, that's why someone says, me, I'll work for 500,000 shillings as a doctor. But his interior motive is to steal medicine.
Yes.
To survive. How do we strike a balance?
So this is like an entry point into the system, and this is how we are seeing corruption.
That's
we're
it.
Seeing, yes.
Someone will accept, says, no, me office, someone steals and studies, probably, I don't know if there's a course for storekeeping, I don't know.
Right.
But there's something in that
maybe records.
Maybe okay, records or whatever. But you're going to give them 300,000 shillings. But their cost monthly is about, say, 700. But for them, they are counting on what they will take from you off the record.
Yes.
Now, that means, again, the desperation leads to most of these offenses you see. People take offices, let me tell you, and without fear of contradiction or doubt, even these scandals you're seeing in iron sheets, it is the same thing.
There is a way that labor will find a compensation of what would ideally have been their right salary.
People's eyes are off their professional execution, but on what they can get on top of what they are entitled, because of lack of a minimum wage. When you go to Europe, you know that a care person will earn between £10 to £12. You plan on that. You either, and there's nothing, unless you're going to steal from the old woman, you're taking care of an old man. But that is also catered for. They tell you you have health insurance and all these things. So the standardization of labor must be reflecting what the intentions are in the law. When we are making policy framework, we must have a reflection. The echoes must come from what the law is. For example, decent employment. What is decent employment? Decent employment engulfs things like, one, working hours.
Yes.
You can't bring someone to work at 7 and send them home at midnight. That's not decent employment. Because by virtue of being human, probably they are tired. They're not productive anymore. Now, we have these young people working in these factories. You see people's hands are being cut off, not because they are adamant or negligent, but because they are tired.
They're not safe.
They're working.
Yes. The working
so
conditions
many hours.
are really even
That's
bad.
not decent work. Issues, for example, safety and health gear. You find people, and I've seen this, when you go to our garages today, informal garages, people are spraying cars without any, but they're inhaling all this. Then that's why you have humongous flow of people in Cancer Institute. People's organs, decent workplaces. Who should create this? Okay, the law talks about all these things. When you go to the Employment Act, they talk about safety.
Yes.
For example, when do we discuss issues of people with disabilities? There's a full act, by the way, thankful to Parliament and government. Persons with Disabilities Act. When you talk about access to work, decent work, access, can disabled people access work? If you have an accountant who is using a wheelchair, can they access premises of court on the 4th floor? In terms of transport, who caters for the transport of persons with disability in this city? if it's not a border, you see the kind of trucks we have, the taxis. All these speak into decent labor. Okay, you come to issues of social security fund, national social security fund. Is it helping labor? Okay, now all this, but the big question is, and this must be formulated, by the way, these are not Mother Mary approaches that the Holy Spirit, the angel Gabriel came and told. It's not that way.
While we are talking about addressing these issues, I think it's also very important to know that is it the industrial court where we have the labor justice? It has only two of them. How are they going to address all these issues? Because I mean, as we are managing this and we get to the industrial court, we only have two just dealing with that. So how is now
and
two people
not even been out there? Not that even people are aware of that.
So who is to take that blame exactly?
But also, Philomena, you see, we can't be focusing on staffing the industrial court. We should be focusing on eliminating some of the barriers that cause some of these. Because before that, there are many tribunals. Many tribunals. Actually, I think the labor appeals tribunal, I've been to, there are many. But the question is,
do they all dispense labor justice?
Yeah, because most of these are civil in nature. You find that sometimes it's just about people negotiating,
mediation,
mediation. Yes. Most of them end up in small claims, handling, so they are normally dealt with, unless they are really big, and most of the big ones now go to courts where you have issues of patent, attack, all the, but away from those ones.
Realistically, have we really had anything come out even from court or in terms of justice?
There are so many cases that have been decided in the industrial court, very many, by the way.
But
the question is probably people don't know.
Issues. That's what I was saying. The awareness is not there. People don't even think that there is help for that.
You'll talk about an industrial court and somebody will ask you, what is that?
What do they do?
Yes, what do they do? Where do I take this case? Or,
someone would think when they are treated unfairly at their workplaces or they are not safe, that is probably a place to go to, but they don't even know the basics of how to get there.
That's true.
And I think we'll also, Felix did talk about the struggle within the employment, the welfare, and you look at the benefits. It's no wonder we have people right here who are qualified teachers and they are going out there for the kadama because they pay probably at that level.
Actually, kadama
is better than a teacher here.
I got to learn that kadama is for women and men are called sekadama, something like that.
So is that
did you know that these people have now gotten to a level where they think the places they get employed in are actually paying them much better than their professions here in Uganda would. It's no wonder we are seeing doctors that every day are looking for jobs outside of Uganda. Because they look at the benefits, the rewards that come with that. You have a medical doctor who is being paid peanuts in terms of what they are qualified to do.
But we have seen all these industrial strikes that are happening.
They are not even yielding. They are not yielding. People are actually looking forward to getting employment elsewhere. And that is where we are having gaps. We even have, did you know that we actually have international doctors that are even getting to government institutions? Yet our own are out there in other countries doing the same exact job. Because these people have put a standard thing, as a surgeon, this is how much I should be paid. So if you're bringing me to Mulago as a surgeon, this is my money. Because they are not Ugandan, you're okay with it.
Relating to
you
what
won't allow
Mollen
Ugandans to do that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to bring into context. There's something that was quite mind-baffling last week that happened. Previous to the arrest and circus and halabaloo of these MPs who were arrested, there was a fracas by legitimate, genuine, educated, just so to add, young girls and boys of this country who are saying, guys, look here, we have been stuck. We need to move into this line of, we have been studying for these years, we are supposed to be in hospitals working. And we don't know what's happening. Everyone seems to fold their lips and hands. Who should be talking to us? And those were pre-medical interns.
Yes.
And they were arrested.
Even
were pushed in Kabangali. And they were all dragged in police. And whatever happened to them, we never knew.
The frustration itself, you don't get back.
Now, a few days passed. Then there were women in black gomeses who later on we learned they were MPs. Inside their gomeses they had patras and workout outfits from one. Who punched police officers? We didn't know even, I don't know if we actually asked if Parliament has a training ground. Anyway, I know that they have a gym, so now we know what happens in the gym. Because the punches are all these things.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, this was a bigger discussion issue. Everyone was shivering. The country was like, had lost, it's like Mother Mary was coming. Hey, MP. And no one was talking about the pre-medical interns and their issue.
Yes. They were
and
looking
that
at
is
it
the
very
problem.
lightly.
It wasn't an issue. Because we saw the triumphant entry of the speaker at CPS and she came out with it. And then the Honorable Thomas Tayewa ended a session till the Prime Minister has to come and explain. The Honorable Justice of the Human Rights Commission at that point summoned the IGP. All these events happened in one day because women in black gomeses
were involved. Is that why it was given too much attention?
On days like this when we are talking about labor, you can't miss to highlight these things that are selective. The August House that should be protecting entirely all workers, because we even have workers MPs, don't want to discuss matters of arresting these pre-medical interns who are simply fighting for a genuine right by the book, and we are here all shivering because they arrested.
You know, somebody talked about that, the fact that resources vis-a-vis priority here in Uganda. Even when you talk about that, we do have our own priorities, and we could say that there are personal, individual interests
and Philomena,
that's come before the country's, needs.
It's the same thing that I always say. The great contestation and fight, now it has become a fight between social, economic welfare versus political administration. You get the point. Now, and I want you to put in contrast these two events. These young women and men don't have a forum to talk about these things. Honestly and truly. They had to march with placards to Parliament. Now, members of Parliament left a platform that is legal for them. Plenary. Where they can even summon the president. The Parliament can do that.
It has
to
so
come
much
and explain.
power, yes.
They could have summoned. They came out to walk back where they are working and they're walking to an office of the Minister of Internal Affairs who sits with them. So they left him in Parliament to walk to where he wasn't. But members, these interns, the laborers, by the way, who are saying we want to go to hospitals and save lives, was stopped. And for us, we as media, as the nation, we want to press a panic button. Because they have arrested a member of Parliament. But who's talking about a doctor who has not been paid for 3 months? Police officers, we need to discuss their laborers, their state, the welfare state. That's why they are punching MPs.
Yeah, because, I mean, if they cannot fulfill their duties and responsibilities.
We have not aligned our discussion.
Challenges.
The frustration that also comes with that, because the moment you have pending issues that have not been addressed, the issue of medical interns we're talking about, this has been a pending issue. We did even see the Ministry of Health coming out to say that they had actually made a plan on payment. They did give them their arrears.
Is that?
That means that for almost 2 years, 3 years now, we are dealing with the same
challenge,
issue.
and it's consistent.
So these are frustrated doctors that you also have in hospitals. It means there are some of them that are not even getting onto streets, but they are seated in hospitals.
For
so
you to come there crying with your stomach,
it speaks to the kind of medical help.
Wife at home crying because I can't
what
afford.
Medicine are we practicing when we have professionals that are really frustrated? And by the way, we might put our focus on the medical interns. It's not just there. We do have workers in Uganda, in any other institution, that are frustrated. You do have people that come to offices and they're just seated there. They're not delivering. It's no wonder you walk into some office and you greet someone, they are frustrated because they have constantly talked about issues. How many companies here in Uganda are giving the real benefits to employees?
Benefits that are supposed to be about legal benefits.
Insurance. How many companies here offer health insurance?
Those are incentives. You go to legal. Terms of how many companies in Uganda remit NSSF for their workers, yet they deduct that money.
A lot of those. So what is that money being used for?
Mostly government.
Is that
mostly government institutions.
No.
Yes.
Who's discussing that?
So which kind of even delivery are we expecting from that? So I think at the end of the day, you look at the end product. When we are keeping all these problems at table and we talk about them and no one is coming up to even own the responsibility or even do something about it, then we are creating a work environment that is at this point intolerable. We are going to have mediocre workers. People are not interested in what they do anymore just because as government, as institutions that are employing these people, you're not even caring about their welfare. And I think that's a deeper conversation.
Well, we are talking about the welfare of employees here in Uganda. What is the state? How are people faring on, especially people that fall in that specific bracket? Well, feedback coming in from our viewers. There is a gentleman here saying Uganda should prioritize formalized labor in the private sector to avoid exploitation of citizens. Let all private companies register their workers and then get operating licenses. But even then, if we don't still address the issues in the system, even if you register and you get a license, it's not a given that the employees will really be served as efficiently as they should. But regardless, I think that could be, you know, I mean, it's baby steps at this point.
Even then they will register, but at the same time, if you have not put a guideline on how much they should be paying people,
it will not exactly yield any results.
Yeah.
Well, this is Charles from Namamve saying that the challenge I have seen with the implementation of minimum wage for laborers is that most of these companies which employ a great number of Ugandans are for the foreign investors, and these are people who easily go in for unskilled labor force to minimize cost of production, whom they very well know that someone has less or no voice because you lack the required qualifications, but you can actually execute the job. This is actually very, very dominant, very, very common, because you lack the academic qualifications, but you can give the...
speaks to the service delivery.
Yes.
Now, if we are resorting to something like that, you have unskilled labor doing jobs of what skilled people should be doing, then what do you expect out of the services that are offered? And if we actually take that as an okay thing in this country or everywhere else, then we are doomed in terms of service delivery. Because there is a reason why you should have skilled people, skilled labor. And I think I'll quote a statement that came from the Kenyan president. He said, that is the former President Uhuru. He said, Kenya got to a certain place, especially in terms of the economic development, because they are putting the right people in the right offices. It means that you have a qualified person doing what they are qualified to do. And that is what we call skilled labor. But the moment you divert away from that, then that is when you will have your curve go down in terms of economic development. Because whatever you're bringing out at whatever level, leave alone even when you talk about the medical world, but how about these other entities of government that should be providing services to Ugandans? You have people that are not qualified. What is that going to speak to the end product? So that's the challenge right there.
Well, Livingstone here is saying in Uganda, it's as good as useless celebrating Labor Day because it is very meaningless to us. Think about mechanisms that put Labor Day in place. Do we actually follow them? And he highlights issues of minimum wage. He talks about workers' welfare. He talks about workers' rights, etc., etc. You see, foreign investors are here because of the weakness of the law. What do you think about that, Felix?
It had to be me, really.
Yeah, we are talking law. Yeah,
that's opinion. But of course, everyone will exploit the loopholes. That's a matter of fact.
If there is a loophole,
Trust
there is an opportunity for somebody.
And it brings it out clear that when you see an influx in some people, and for you the only thing you can trade is cheap labor, you should be worried. It's what we were saying earlier. That can't be your only tool of trade. It's because you have cheap labor.
It's really, really...
It should rather be affordable than being cheap. Because what happens then, it means that even people who should earn what ideally is fair for them professionally will not earn it because it has been dubbed to be cheap. A person who will probably be getting about 5 million should be getting about 1 million because it has to be cheap. Now, how about we discuss an affordable And something else that they said, I think, I have noticed that most of East African countries have gotten into a position where they value nations or nationals than the foreigners. Kenya went on to it. It has that limitation that you cannot have many foreigners working vis-a-vis nationals. There's that policy. I've seen many people now rushing to marry Kenyan girls so they can get residence permits.
So?
Oh yes, I have many friends. Because they were being deported. Because they're being deported.
This is
Same thing in Tanzania. Rwanda. You just can't go because you go mani. They are also people who fry pancakes. So you either have to be a national or have a permit to. You just can't go. Labor is away from this country. You will find the Congolese. We don't know where they were. They teleported here. You don't know. You find an Indian as a security guard. You find a Somali who is a butcher owner. Even the smallest work that should be done by Ugandans, we have foreigner. I don't know if they're expatriates in selling meat. I don't know what skills you need to be having. So we need to align these things. Let's leave some taka work for Ugandans, honestly. How do you find a Congolese pushing a Chigali? Leave the Chigali for...
You'll find a Chinese man as a security guard.
You find the Chinese, I see them on their tuk-tuk. They are vending these things that kids eat. They are called what? Kids love them a lot. But they are vending bagia. Let me put it that way. Chinese. Someone can't leave Guangzhou to come and vend bagia. When there's Mollen and Philomena and myself, let's protect some work for, an Indian as it's. Are we at the level of what we call like also importing security guard?
I mean,
and what is it doing? Well,
it's also like, I think I was reading one of the comments that is coming through on Twitter. Someone was saying, going out of Uganda, when in Uganda, casual workers are suffering in the hands of foreign investors, and the government can't do anything about it. And then the person put crying emoji. This is a really sad situation.
So
look at the fact that even when you bring foreign investors, and I think this is what Felix was comparing to Kenya, are there restrictions that say, if you're coming here, yes, you're coming alone, but the people that should work in this particular venture of yours must be Ugandans.
Bring the money.
But here you have an Indian running a farm, and the rest of the workers are actually
the only
Indians.
employee they have is a girl who cooks.
And people have actually taken advantage of this. Even our neighbors here in Kenya. Look at some of the Kenyan companies that we are well aware of who are here. You will actually see that they are all Kenyans working there.
They used to be
Where do we have the restriction right there? Why can't we tell them, yes, you're coming here to invest, you're bringing your money, you're bringing a good thing to Uganda, but we also require that you employ Ugandans. And this is a take-or leave.
Well,
these investors will still stay.
As the celebrations,
leeway.
As the celebrations go down there in Namutumba district now, there are several questions that we hope will be answered. And I love the fact that they're talking about promoting positive work, promoting ethics at all these, while executing our responsibilities, but also looking at maintaining cultural ethics as well. But in all of these, what have we done to ensure that this is going to be achieved? And of course, looking at things like increased investment, what is that going to help? Or even increasing household incomes. And we're looking at challenges like this. Are we actually, the question remains, are we going to get to where we want when we still have conditions like this, whether from government, whether from the private sector, even the employees themselves? Are we going to achieve what we want when we still have our industry running like this? Well, that is a question we believe should be answered right there in the celebrations. And of course, speaking of which, we'll be giving you quite the live updates here on UBC TV, so make sure you stay with us all the way through. We'll go for a break. When we get back, we'll have Ruben Chibidango giving us sports updates. Good morning.